How much longer before we start the tape? Oh, okay. So again, just wanted to thank our musicians, where are they? So we can all just make our way back to our seats now because we are literally about to start the next presentation. It's my great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. He's a scientist. He's worked as an electrical engineer in Italy. He's taught at a number of universities in Italy and Europe. A man that's very distinguished in his field, a scientist who has been trained to look at data, look at evidence with a very critical eye, and he became aware of a very unique phenomenon, something that I have not heard of before when it comes to the phenomenon of extraterrestrial contact. We have heard of many cases of extraterrestrial contact. Many people have had experiences with extraterrestrials and talked about those, written books, gone public and so forth. But we have never heard of a case like this where over 100 people, very distinguished people, some of them generals and diplomats, leading figures in Italy, Germany, other countries in Europe, had contact with this same group of extraterrestrials. And Stefano Breccia, who is our next speaker, is someone who's interviewed roughly 80 of these people who have had these contacts with these extraterrestrials that were operating in Italy openly but secretly. And he has spoken with all these witnesses. He has taken down their testimonies. He has film or photos of what they saw, what they experienced, and also he himself is very privileged to have had his own unique experiences with this group of extraterrestrials. But I won't say any more. I'll leave it to him to discuss all that. But I'm very pleased and welcome Professor Stefano Breccia to the Earth Transformation Conference.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, let me thank Michael Salla and his staff for the excellent work they have done in organizing this meeting. And let me apologize for my poor English. I hope you will be able to understand me. Now, let us see if this works. Okay, I will speak about a UFO phenomena named Amicizia. And of course, this will be but a short survey because it is too big to be condensed in an hour or so. Okay, in Amicizia, we were speaking about aliens and so flying saucers. Okay, let's start. What have these words in common? Amicizia, Amitié, Freundschaft, Amistad, Družba. All of them mean friendship in different languages, Italiano, French, German, Spanish, Russian. But, and this is a very important problem, these are the names that different people from different countries, often unaware of one another, have given to the same phenomenon. All of them invented the name Amicizia, or a variant in a different language. That is, people from Italy, Switzerland, Germany, France, Siberia, Argentina, and Chile, as far as I know, all of them have given the same name to the same experience. The contact with human-looking entities proceeding from outside our Earth. I underline human-looking entities. They were totally human. The main character within the Italian group of contactees has been a psychiatrist, Dr. Bruno Samaciccia, who died some years ago. And here is Bruno. In Montesilvano. Montesilvano was, in those times, a small village in the north of Pescara. Pescara is a larger town in the center of Italy on the Adriatic Sea. Bruno had a dog, you may see it here, who had been named Dick. And also this dog, strangely enough, had a role in the history of Amicizia. Bruno, not Dick, has written more than 100 books, mainly on religious subjects. For instance, this is a treatise on the Christ Passion, the Christ sacrifice. One of his books, in the French version, Le Miracle Eucharistique de Lanciano, received the dedication by Karol Wojtyła, who was to become, as you know, Pope John Paul II. In those times, in 1974, Wojtyła was the Archbishop of Cracovia. And so you may see Bruno Samaciccia was a very esteemed person. He also sponsored the publication of many books, mainly about St. Francis. For instance, this is the collection of all the writings by St. Francis and Santa Chiara. As you may see, I've done something wrong. Help? As you may see here, this book has been edited by Bruno Samaciccia. It's been printed thanks to Bruno Samaciccia. Then, just a personal note, we were very friendly to each other, and here is the dedication he made to myself, a dedication which I remember with gratitude. To my dear moral son, Stefano Breccia, I wish that the eternal light of God shines over him forever. Bruno. Well, so there was a history of contacts between a group of aliens and a group of Italian people. Samaciccia found a name for his friends from outside, because typically these men were not using proper nouns. And so he named them W56. W means double victory. In Italian, the letter W is read double V. So it is V plus V. And 56 has been the year when this experience began for him. The language of this gentleman does not make use of nouns. Their grammar is totally different from the grammars we know, and so they do not use either common nouns nor proper nouns. So the W56 has been a name that they received by some Amicizia. Anyway, they were remembering that in very remote past, over this earth, they had been called Acri. I have made some research and found that in Sanskrit, that word that you see there is pronounced Acri and means the sage old ones. In the same way, in hieroglyphs, so ancient Egyptian, that name has the same pronunciation and the same meaning. Just because of the Egyptian grammar, as it is a plural, it is read acriu. The W56 are a confederation of different people coming from almost all the universe we know. They come here for many reasons. One of the most important ones is that to them, Earth has a mystical meaning. They maintain that our planet has been one among the only 50 planets in our galaxy where life has been born. Just imagine how many billions of stars there are in our galaxy, how many billions of planets are there. Well, only in 50 planets, they maintain, life has been born. Our Earth has been one of these 50 planets, and therefore it has a mystical meaning to them. Moreover, they were stating that our planet is one among the most beautiful all over the universe, and we can't but agree, of course. From a logistical point of view, they were living inside underground bases. To them, it was an extremely easy job to build an underground base. They were needing roughly half an hour to do so, and just a matter of seconds to destroy it. But as many among them were totally human-like, they were living among us, within our society, often holding high-level positions inside it. So I would not be surprised if, in this moment, one of our friends sits among you. Nobody would recognize him. It is not a joke. It happened a lot of times. Well, they had one big, extremely large base in the center of Italy. It was some 20 kilometers under the surface. But of course, they had a lot of smaller bases at lower depths. The large base went from, roughly speaking, Rimini down to Ortona, that is, say, 200 kilometers in length. From the center of Italy to the center of the Adriatic Sea, some 100 kilometers or so, and the roof was 300 meters. To the point that inside such a huge structure, there were meteorological conditions, and very often it was raining inside because of the huge amount of air that was contained. Who knows why? I do not know why. Italy has been chosen by them as their reference country. So that all of them were speaking Italian, often making funny mistakes, but anyway, they were speaking Italian. Later on, we will see some of their speech. Of course, there were other bases in the other countries they were interested in. So France, Switzerland, Germany, and so on. Their master in Italy was a man 3.5 meters tall, named Di Pietro. This image is a Polaroid photo and shows Di Pietro appearing via some kind of remote control on the back of one of the Italian members of Amicizia. As you may see, he is roughly 3.5 meters tall. Nevertheless, even being as huge as that, he was often walking our streets without too many problems. Di Pietro, indeed, was very fond of our way of living, and I should say the ancestral Italian way of living. Okay, as I was telling before, as strange as it may look, he was used to drive a white and blue Citroën DS. With the front left seat missing, he was sitting directly on the back, of course. He liked very much our food and drinks, especially red wines, and he was used to smoke cigars. I said that he was very fond of the ancestral Italian way of living. For instance, a habit which nowadays no longer exists in Italy was to drink wine directly from the bottle this way. He liked to drink wine this way. Another strange thing, by the way, there is no music. There should be a music passage in here. Okay, in this case it's not so important, but later on it should be important. Okay, in the meantime I go on. The musical piece, okay. He had built himself a violin. He imagined a violin in the hands of such a big person that he liked to play. He liked very much our symphonic music, especially in the steppes of Central Asia by Alexander Porfiryevich Bardin, and also Chopin was among his favorites. Technology is always a problem. go on? Pietro was speaking many languages, and here I present a short poem he has written in German. Das will viel heißen, natürlich Himmler, and so on. The translation is, the will may be felt obviously with care, with many variants, but if you pay attention, you may find everything in my adoptive son. We are always ready to discuss parity, and we find here and there some silent suggestions. The adoptive son was Bruno Samaciccia. Well, in this context, the role of Earthlings consisted mainly in supplying the W56 with food and metals. And both were difficult problems. With metals, they were requiring even radium that in those years, and even today, it is illegal to purchase and sell radioactive materials. Moreover, the W56 were asking Earthlings to act according to their requests. At times, they were needing even exotic substances, and this has been really a problem with the strontium niobate of barium, which I had been asked to find, and I've been able to find it in Germany. The problem was the strontium niobate of barium in those years had no practical application. So it was not produced by any chemical industry. Today it is used in the technology of video cameras. And by the way, also the strontium niobate of barium is a radioactive material. In addition, Bruno has been providing 2 trucks per month full of fruits or fish. Most of the times at his own expense, because the other members of the group had been contributing only at times when they had the possibility to. So for Bruno, this story has been a huge expense. For instance, he had also to build a very large villa on the outskirts of Montesilvano, north of Pescara. This villa has been designed by our friends. They decided how it was to be built, how many rooms there should be there, and so on and so forth. And this is the building. Really building which was meant to be used as a center of instruction. The idea was to gather selected groups of people to host them in this house and have them interact with the W56 in order that little by little this information could get spread. Indeed, it did not work. Here we see Bruno Samaciccia, the gentleman in the center of the picture, and Giancarlo De Carlo, the man on the left, together with their wives. In the background, an army general, a Carabiniers general, and the managing director of the telephone company of Central Italy. Gaetano Tamburini Orsini is the Carabiniers general who decided to write a book in which he presents some excerpts from Bruno's thoughts, from Bruno's way of thinking, which was, after all, the way of thinking of the W56. Of course, there were continuously contacts taking place. And many were the ways this happened. The most common was via telephone calls in both directions. That means that, for instance, one of them could phone me, but at the same time I was able to dial a telephone number, typically 30 figures long, and then on the other side the W56 was responding. Superimposing over normal radio or TV broadcast. That means that you had a radio set tuned on some program. All of a sudden, the program was going away, and in its place, the voice or the music or anything by the W56 could be heard. The phenomenon was extremely strange because I often made the experiment of taking two identical radio sets, tuned at the same frequency. Only the one selected was fading away and switching to the W56, while the other, nearby, was acting normally. That means that a huge amount of energy was involved, together with an extremely high directivity. Then they were making use of the then native messaging technology via remote computers. In those years, there were no personal computers, and typically there were computing centers placed in various universities, typically, and you could connect via passive terminals through modems over the telephone lines to the remote computers and use them. And in this structure, there was also a messaging technology very, very rough for those years, very advanced for those years, very rough as seen with present-day eyes. And of course, via face-to-face meetings, which were extremely frequent. Okay, let me stop one moment to comment a very strange story that has seen Bruno Sammaticcia involved, and it was a supposed swindle. Bruno Sammaticcia has been condemned in a trial, in a tribunal, because he would have extorted a huge amount of money, say, roughly speaking, $100,000, from an elderly couple. And over Italian newspaper, many articles have appeared because I remember Bruno Sammaticcia was a very well-known person in Italy. This is one of the articles. This is another one. You see in the caption on the top, they believed in the healing capabilities of a Martian who was able to enter radio broadcast. The first article has been written by Silvana Ferrante, who sent it to several newspapers. She had been an attorney, but then she gave up, starting writing articles and detective stories. When I wrote her asking for details, she never answered my mail. But what all these reports failed to mention, as usual, is that Bruno has been actually condemned in a first trial, but that he appealed and was proclaimed totally innocent in 2002. And this is the sentence. The Court of Appeal, in partial modification, declares that charges and justifications being balanced, the trial is closed by prescription. Irrevocable sentence, December 28, 2002. What had happened? The legal cause has been brought against Bruno by the son of an elder farmer who had been disgusted by his son's behavior, and so had decided to disinherit him leaving all of his wealth to a monastery. So no money was earned by Bruno. That's why, after a more thorough analysis, he was deemed totally innocent, to the point that a third degree of trial has been prohibited. So if you chance to read about a process in which Amicizia has been involved, it has been this one. Okay, now let's start with some images, some films of the scouts of the W56. But let me state that pictures are meaningless because it is too easy to fake them, at least to some point. Of course, when the one I'm going to show had been shot, the required hardware was not available yet. Moreover, most important, nobody up to today has been able to show that even one of them is a fake. These photos have been analyzed by many university researchers, and nobody has been able to demonstrate that even one of them is a fake. And of course, I'm going to present just a short selection. Just to start, a very unusual picture. I believe that you may have seen it in my book and never seen a picture alike. There is a formation of Sea Scouts shot from a very unusual point of view. You see, the picture has been taken from a point above the formation. In the background, there is the Adriatic Sea. As you see, the sun was on the bottom of the picture. And the scouts are in a rather triangular formation. Then in Pescara, over the central restaurant Il Gabbiano. The restaurant is the one on the right side. And we are on the seashore in the very center of the town, as it was many years ago. In the outskirts of Milano, Milano, you know, is a very important town in the north of Italy. And we have this low-flying scout. In the background, this is Milan, and this is the highest building in Milan, the skyscraper Pirelli. A sequence of images shot over Pescara, 27th of September 1957. On the shore of Pescara, near Collorlando, which is a small hill sitting on the west of Pescara. I shot this picture. Then two other pictures I've shot in the 60s, just south of Chieti, which means southwest from Pescara. Of course, the photographic technology was not so advanced. Okay, that structure on the left is a tree. Now, please remember the skyline and that peculiar tree. Last year, I shot a picture from under the porch of the house where now I live in Chieti. This is the picture. Most houses weren't there 50 years ago, but the tree is still in place. Note how strange this has been. In the 60s, I was wandering in the country around Chieti, and there was nothing. It was just plain country. Many years later, I live in a villa that my wife, that at the time did not know me, had built in the very same place from where I shot those two pictures. A landing in Montesilvano against north of Pescara. Actually, these pictures show a landing. That means a scout that tries to land in a field. Actually, these pictures belong to two different sequences. The scout is very similar in the two instances. The second sequence has been shot in Troeno, north of Milano. Who knows why? Somebody has mixed the pictures from the two sequences. Many pictures have been lost, and so now we have been left only with these pictures. Okay, here's the scout approaching from the west. Studying the situation, then trying a first landing. Okay, here is trying to land. The ground on the right was rather rough, so that the pilot understood that it was probably difficult to land there, so changed his mind, gained height, and went to the other side of the field, then started a landing sequence. The last picture I shot was showing the craft on the ground, but also this picture has been lost. Now, Roseto, north of Pescara, 3 scouts making aerobatics. Then the building of my company, in those times under construction. You see, my company was on the outskirts of L'Aquila, and this was the building under construction. And in the moment I shot this picture, an object passed over the construction. The speed of the shutter was 1/60th of a second. So imagine how quick that object had to be. And as you may see, while moving, it was bubbling, so that at times it was reflecting the sun, at times it was not reflecting the sun, according to its position. As you know, such crafts have been named also bells after George Adamski. Professor Paolo Di Girolamo had the chance to photograph a series of strange bells over Rome, and this is probably the best of his pictures, among his pictures. L'Aquila, from my house, the scout is the small black object on the right. Then one interesting, on April 15, 1962, La Domenica del Corriere, one among the major Italian magazines, presented this cover. The article told that Gaspare de Lama, a very well-known painter from Milan, had shot some pictures to a scout in the very center of Milan, from Giulio Cesare Square. Here is one of his pictures. You see the scout is that object on the left. But very few people are aware that there is also a film of the event. A film that I am going to show in public now for the first time all over the world. Let's see if it starts. Okay, it starts. It doesn't show anything exceptional, but how erratically the scout is moving, and on the base, at times you may see the houses of Pescara, chimneys, of Milan, excuse me, chimneys and the like. It's rather long, I cut just the sequence. Okay, and so on. Another of my pictures, Bologna, 1967. Alfredo Benni is a researcher from the Italian CUN. CUN is the Center for UFO Analysis, the National Center for UFO Studies. Benni is not a person whatever. He is an expert on satellite pictures analysis and recognition. He has made a very important career under the Army in this sector. And Benni says, at first I was rather skeptic, but after my analysis, I had to conclude that these pictures are real. Garofalo, another analyst from University of Pisa, everything makes me believe that these images are true. Okay, of course, here I present persons who express positive opinions. I do not present any negative opinions simply because there is none of them. Nobody sufficiently expert on the problem who analyzed these pictures has been able to show that even one of them is a fake. This is a funny film. It has been shot through an open window in Milan. Okay, there is the usual scout going mad in the sky over the houses. At a certain moment, you will find an unforeseen character. Here it is. It is Dick, the dog of Amicizia, who is participating to the stage. This dog has been actually extremely important in this history. Okay, let's stop here. Then let's change the visual for a moment. Let me speak about the Roccapia, because in my book I often recall the Roccapia. It is a place that has been very important in this story, and probably it is important even today. And so from time to time I like to go to the Roccapia and spend some hours around it, often with friends with me. The Roccapia is an ancient castle built by Pope Pio IV in 1560 on the top of a hill on the outskirts of Ascoli Piceno, center of Italy, north of Pescara. And this is the main entrance as it is today. The following image is a fake that I made to show what I have seen the first time I went to the Roccapia. I was on the outside of the castle, and all of a sudden a flying saucer appeared from the backside. A lady that was with me went crazy, and so the scout disappeared immediately. I repeat, this is a fake. In October of 2004, I made just another trip to the Roccapia, parking my car at the base of one of its towers. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, fine weather, and I shot a picture of my car. And here is the picture. Do you see anything strange in this picture? Remember, it was dim light, no direct light from the sun, fine weather, about 10 o'clock in the morning. Any ideas? Pardon me? I don't understand. Well, when I saw this image, I made a jump, because it is totally impossible. The plate of my car is the most vivid object within the picture. You've seen a white rectangle, yet there was no source of light aiming at it. My car was dim light, no reason for it being as light as this. You see how lighted it is. Yet there was no source of light aside the diffused light, because we were in the shadow of one tower. Then I have taken the negative, because it is an analog picture. I found a professional scanner, 64 bits per pixel. I have scanned this image through a microscope. Then, you know, I've been teaching computer algorithms for computer graphics at the university for 20 years, so it is my job to do things like that. I found peculiar algorithms. I wrote programs to do the job, and in some way, I've been able to make visible the characters on the plate, of course in false colors. Well, this elaboration shows that the plate was not just a white rectangle over the image. But that its brightness had been some way enhanced, nobody knows how and why, getting an almost saturation. I repeat, it was an analog picture, using an analog camera, a normal film. In another occasion, I got once again to the Roccapia with a friend of mine and shot him a picture, this time using a digital camera. We were once again both in the shadow of the walls. And this has been the result. You see my friend in the center and those strange luminous effects. I had a digital camera so that I could see immediately the result of the picture. And having seen this strange effect, I shot immediately another picture, maybe some 20 seconds later, 20 seconds later. And this is the second picture, obviously in the very same luminous conditions. And now, nothing strange appears. We were in a very important spot, in a spot where years before, a passageway could be opened to enter the main underground base of the W56. In all evidence, some activity is still going on, because these pictures have been shot a couple of years ago. So. Then, last year, I made just another trip to the Roccapia, this time with some old members of our Amicizia group. I repeat, Amicizia started, roughly speaking, in the 50s, and is probably going on even today. So many of the charities involved are now elder persons. One of them got touched. He asked me to eliminate his face from this picture. Okay, here there is a small sequence of a documentary made by Jaime Sanflota, the well-known Mexican TV producer and UFO researcher, who recently came to Italy in order to make a move on the history of Amicizia. Okay, it looks that there is some incompatibility with computers, so I'm not able to show the movie, which is interesting, just showing the vivacity of Marsan in Pescara, speaking about Villa de Rises, and also included a deserted villa near to the Pescara River, where in the 70s, two of the W-56 were living inside this villa. Okay, the movie does not start. And here is how Villa de Rises was in those years. An old construction, deserted and abandoned. Okay, we have seen some pictures of the scouts, of our friends. Now let's have a look to them directly. And let's start with the image of one of them who had been named Kenyo, a picture shot inside the villa built by Amicizia. And here is Mr. Kenyo. As you see, a totally human-looking, totally normal person. But an Italian researcher, Barbara Batelli, asked me the original file of this picture. Then she has been able to ascertain that the guy is roughly 3 meters tall. 3 meters mean 10 feet. You may find the English version of a study at that address, spaziovita.com. And if you go to the site of Paola Harris, you find the link also in that site. Just to summarize, here is Kenyo compared to one pine needle that is visible above him. You see the pine needle just over the head of Kenyo. Barbara has copied the needle on the side of Kenyo. And knowing that pine needles are roughly 15 to 20 centimeters long, it is quite easy to find out that the total is above 3 meters. In another attempt to compute Kenyo's height, Barbara referred to some gratings barely visible in the background of the image. Then, using Google SketchUp, she has been able to confirm the previous height. Using that software, she has also been able to show us how a normal human would look in front of Kenyo. Of course. When she made this analysis, she was astonished. Easy to understand why. And she has written an article in one of the Italian magazines devoted to UFO. And she says, now researchers and the bankers will obviously try to verify the photo confronting that face with all similar face they'll be able to discover, and in case they will probably open also the police archives. That face is too recognizable. What could happen if somebody would identify that GUI saying, hey, I know him, he's my cousin, my brother, friend, husband, or whatever? The whole story would fall, of course. And she goes on. So why Dr. Breccia exposed his name and his career to such a great risk? Probably because he is totally certain that the person portrayed in that photo was not from this earth. Area 51, number 22, July 2007. They were not always as tall as that. More often than not, they were of average age. And this is a normal, human-looking person. Let's speak a bit about the picture on the cover of Mass Contacts. Here it is. Actually, it belongs to a group of images, each one of them composed of two different half photos joined together. I know who has made this strange operation, but as this person died many years ago, I do not know why he did this strange thing. Another picture from the same sequence. It is evident that it is made of two different half pictures. If you look carefully, you would find a very strange kind of alien with 3 arms. Well, the W-56 were fighting a group of artificial beings that they had created, so that they were naming them our enemy brothers. And as usual, Bruno Samaciccia had found a new name to them, CTRs, from the Italian word contrari, opposites. One of the CTRs, unfortunately, this picture is very bad made. Sorry for the bad quality. I do not know who has shot this picture. And one of their scouts, in this case I know who is the author of the picture. It has been taken in the north of Rome in an old archaeological structure that is a very ancient Etruscan town, Veio. Let's get back to W-56. They were always asking us to be active on their side. They were saying, please help us to help yourselves. The help they were requesting us consisted mainly in keeping our group compact. That was more important than what may look from these words. To them, indeed, the cohesion among people was not just an abstract concept, but an actual living entity that they were calling Iureda. They were needing Iureda's well-being because it was essential to the working of almost all of their equipments.
Siate sicuri con tutta la vostra dedizione, con tutta la vostra umanità, perché in questo momento noi abbiamo bisogno di ciò, come l'acetato cerca acqua.
Okay. This is one of the W-56 speaking. Probably the oldest among you will have recognized a strange inflection that was typical of the fascist police during Italia fascist period. That is because our friend had learned Italian from the radio broadcast of the fascist period, and so he believed that Italian should have been spoken that way. How may I start the second icon? short sentence, stay together, stay together. Okay, often they were also witty. The messaging system we were using in those years was based upon an IBM 360-67 in Pisa and passive TTYs, the teletypewriters, connected to it via modems. And I will show in the next slide a quick exchange between myself and one of the W56, just in order to explain better what he writes, what the W56 sends to the computer and then reflects to me, is written in capital letters. My answers are in small letters. We are speaking Italian. These are these four last sentences from video, forse non c'è nessun intruso, forse ce n'è uno che conosco bene, and so on. This is a translation into English. Maybe there is no intruder. I answer, maybe there is one I know well. And he answered, do you mean the one I do know well? Then there is an equinox. And this is an untranslatable pun between equinoctio, meaning equinox, and equivoco, meaning misunderstanding. Or maybe the exchanges were in Russian. As you know, Russian uses Cyrillic characters that are difficult to use on TTYs. And so we were writing Russian in Latin characters. And one of them asked me, a vodka pescare ne pijot? And I answered, только коньяк, потому что это Giancarlo торговает. Giancarlo is Giancarlo De Carlo, that person who appeared in that picture together with Bruno Sammacice. In those years, Giancarlo was the commercial director of Aurum, that is an important company that sells liquors and spirits. In those years, Aurum was trying to put into the market a kind of cognac that did not go too well. And so my interlocutor answers, imagine that. Arzenta ето D'Annunzio se slavil, Yet Giancarlo Torgavai Dogenby. That means that this gentleman was aware of the person of D'Annunzio, the famous Italian writer. As you know, D'Annunzio was inventing many neologisms in Italian. One among them has been the arzente, which was some kind of cognac. And so our alien was also aware of the arzente designed by D'Annunzio many years before. Or maybe exchanges in English. The last sentence, crazy like drunken crazy cats, has become a popular way of speaking. In those years, there were not only the W56 and CTRs in Italy. There were other groups active in my country. Among them, the UMITs, who were pretending to belong to the Spanish group. Indeed, I do not believe that that is true. Of course, the CTRs, a strange group, the Elta V, interested in computer music. Then the UTI, a kind of cosmic police at a higher level, who were taking actions against their friends when they were passing limits. So there was also a kind of police superintending to their activities. Okay, some examples of their voices. Before we have heard a person who could be easily taken for a fascist gerarcha. Now, a person speaking Russian. Again, how is possible to start the sound? Start the sound. We may do maybe a thing different. I may go on with the presentation, and in the second moment I may present on the file. Okay, so now for the moment let's suspend the audio. At the end of the presentation I'll go through them. Okay, and here there are two of the W56 speaking on the telephone. The first was Di Pietro, the master of the expedition, then Sigir, speaking first French, then Italian, and also there are members of the Italian group in the background. Okay, Di Pietro has made the calembour in Italian difficult to translate into English. He says, non tradite la nostra realtà, do not betray our reality, e neanche la nostra lealtà, nor our loyalty. Then there is a very long wireless communication, 23 minutes long, very garbled in its first part. A W56 speaks who had got the name Gallarate, from the name of an Italian village. And during this transmission, there is Giancarlo that makes a short comment in the background. Gallarate speaks with a clear accent, Abruzzo style. He also makes a mistake in Italian grammar. At a certain moment, he speaks the name proiettoli instead of the correct proiettili. Okay, when we will be able to hear these files, please remember that these tapes are over 15 years old, so the quality is not so good. Then a conversation between a professor in Rome and one of the people I named Italian humans. And we will see how strident is the voice of the alien, to the point that what he says is not always understandable, although he is speaking plain Italian. Later on, in this long telephone call, rather 1 hour long, he will switch to Spanish. In the end, an interesting telephone conversation between myself and Suola, a girl from the group of Italian myths. Following a previous request from my part, she is addressing me in her native language. When I received this telephone call, at first I was confused, and I was believing she was speaking Russian, and so I started answering in this language. After a while, I understood that she was speaking her language, and so I started laughing. Nevertheless, I went on continuing speaking Russian. Some example of their writings and drawings. This is an example of the writing of their main language. It is an ideographic language. There is no definite sense of reading. They were saying that the message should be taken at the same time from all over the image. That's another kind of language. That's a drawing, a very strange other drawing. Oh, this is very interesting, and unfortunately, we will have to hear it in the Breccia way. A friend of mine, living in a town not so far from mine, has put up a meteorological station that records the environment situation and sends its data into the internet. Among other devices, there is a webcam that records sounds and images outside his home. One Sunday morning, he phoned me telling me to connect to the internet and to listen to the strange sound generated, who knows how and why, by his webcam. And for over 1 hour and a half, I heard awful noises. And here I present a short excerpt. Okay, in 2000, I had made a presentation on fractal analysis, you know, a very strange kind of mathematics. This presentation was for an audience of mathematicians from the University of Novosibirsk. In that occasion, I presented also some examples of fractal music I had generated by a computer. And it has been the first and only instance when my musical files went public. And this is one of the passages I had presented. When we listen to this, you'll recognize the same musical tones of the previous file. So, someone who knows why and how had been able to take one old musical file I had generated and not even recorded. I do not have a recording of the file. I had to run again the program to get this file, and had transmitted to a webcam in a way deliberately distorted, who knows why. Amusing. Okay, now let's go rather quickly because we are short on time. In southern Chile, some people report contacts with presumed aliens who live in a secluded island, La Isla Friendship. Who knows why, in a Spanish-speaking country, an English name. Anyway, this is La Supuesta Isla Friendship. And here I presented 2 interviews to 2 among the main characters, Octavio Ortiz, a passage from an interview, okay. Ernesto de la Fuente, this is much more interesting. He is an engineer. And in this passage he says that he went into one of their bases. He found that these aliens too like to smoke puros, that is cigars, and that they hablaban en castellano. They were speaking Spanish. It started in 1985, and it looks to be still going on. And it is a history practically identical with Amicizia. Then some persons from the Italian branch. Of course, many of these in the meantime have passed away. Here there is Alberto Perego, former Italian consul in Brazil, together with Mario Maioli, which has been the founder of the CUN, Luz Instag, which was the secretary of George Adamski. From the left to the right, Perego, Adamski, Zinstag, and, Perego, Maioli, Zinstag, and Adamski. I was also a good friend of Perego. Here is one of his dedications to Stefano Breccia, Waiting for the Future. The 4 books written by Alberto Perigo have been the first books on UFOs ever printed in Italian. And more important, they are portraying, even today, the basic concepts within Amicizia. Then the journalist Bruno Ghibaudi, former president of the Italian branch of WWF, and an expert in aeronautics. Here is Ghibaudi, the gentleman on the right. Bruno Ghibaudi has written hundreds of articles about UFOs on Italian newspapers and magazines. He did not hesitate to speak about his own experiences with the W-56. This is one of his articles. Bruno Ghibaudi says, I have spoken with the pilot of flying saucers. Leore, January 24, 1963. The gentleman on the left is Perigo, the one on the right is Ghibaudi. Alberto Perigo and Bruno Ghibaudi, together with Mario Maioli, have been the forerunners of ufology in Italy. And, of course, Alberto and Bruno have both been within Amicizia. Then Professor Paolo Di Girolamo, whom Paolo Harris has interviewed last August. Di Girolamo on the right, obviously Paolo Harris on the left. My old friend Paolo has just written a book on his W-56 experiences. That is the cover. This book should be printed also in Spanish and English. The title means we and them. Another friend of mine, the painter Gaspare Delama, a very old person, he is about 19 years old. Then a university professor who does not want his name made public is writing a book of his experiences, making use of a nom de plume. The Croatian scholar Nicola Duper is acting as a spokesman of this university professor. The following image shows Duper together with Roberto Pinotti. Roberto Pinotti on the left is the secretary of the CUN. Duper is the gentleman on the right. Then, as I too was involved, here I present a picture of myself on the shores of the Baikal Lake together with Valery Bakalov, then director of the University of Novosibirsk. Okay, now there is another audio file, is Samachiccia speaking. Okay, and this is saying these sentences, I have only you, and my wife tells me that you, my boy, are going to get tired because I'm exploiting you. But I answer, if he is here, it's because he volunteered to write a book, but my wife doesn't understand. She says that I'm dazing you. Look, I tell her, he too lived such experiences, a fragment of the whole story, and so it is not by chance that he has got here. Okay, of course I'm not able to speak Hawaiian, and I would have liked to say you goodbye using once more the words by Din Pietro. And here Din Pietro says goodbye to you all in Italian. Now, these files are not in the same original order. We will see what they are saying. Okay, this is Walla, for instance.
Siate sentiti con tutta la vostra dedizione, con tutta la vostra umanità, perché in questo momento noi abbiamo bisogno di ciò, come l'ha Stefano cerca acqua.
The second stay together.
Voi siate uniti, uniti, uniti.
Then, okay, this usual probably. The strange sound recorded by the webcam. And so on. So stop. Let's stop here. My musical file. As you may hear, they are practically identical. The noise file is just half a note higher. Then what? Something in Russian.
Я буду вспоминать вас, которые вы были в тот ясный день. Поймите, неделю назад, когда вы были в ветлом пляке и разговаривали, дали, еще тогда на скамье лежала белая чайка.
Who knows why this W56 decided to send me this badly pronounced sentence, and years later I've been able to recognize a passage from The Seagull by Chekhov. And then Hotel Gallerate, for instance. the proiettili elettronici instead of proiettili elettronici. And so on. It would be difficult to translate in real time what he says. And let's see, whatever. In Pietro, for instance.
Pronto di Pietro?
Saluto a tutti. Non tradite mai la nostra lealtà e neanche la nostra lealtà. Vi saluto a tutti. Sono Astra da Gesso.
Pronto, Sigir? 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 Senti, ecco, di un saluto a Verena, se vuoi in francese, che tu hai conosciuto la lingua, come vuoi, eccola.
Ciao, Sigir.
Verena, mon chéri Verena, vous êtes dans mon cœur.
Oui, je comprends.
Here Sigil is speaking French.
Arrivederci a tutti.
Arrivederci, sì.
Vi prego.
Sì.
And so on. Then let's see what else. League, friendship, symphony.
Vi saluto a tutti.
Goodbye to you all, by Pietro. Thank you.